The mothership of the alien empire was unlike anything a human eye had ever seen. It was not made of metal in the way human ships were, but of living crystal and strange energy that pulsed like the veins of a giant creature. The corridors stretched high and endless, glowing with pale light that gave no warmth. The air itself hummed as though the ship were alive and listening. At the heart of this great vessel lay the grand hall where rulers met their captives. Thousands of glowing crystals floated in the air, casting shifting patterns of light across the floor that shimmered like water. Alien guards, tall and armored in silver plates, stood in perfect lines along the edges. Their sharp eyes followed every movement, ready to strike at the smallest sign of resistance. And there, in the middle of the hall, stood a lone human. His armor was worn, scarred from battle, and his helmet hid his face. The marks on his chest plate told a story of many fights survived, but not without cost. His name was Captain Elias, a soldier who had fought to defend his people even when the odds turned hopeless. Now, after weeks of struggle, he had been captured and brought before the alien queen herself. The queen was unlike her guards. She stood taller, her body graceful but powerful, with scales that shimmered like liquid emerald under the light. A crown-like crest rose from her head, giving her an appearance both royal and fearsome. Her eyes glowed faintly, filled with sharp intelligence and a hint of curiosity. She studied Elias carefully. Other prisoners before him had trembled or shouted in fear. Some had begged for life, others had cursed her name. But this human was silent, steady as a stone in a storm. His stillness made him stand out even more than if he had fought against his captors. The queen walked down the crystal steps of her throne, her voice carrying across the hall. "Take off your helmet," she ordered. Her voice was not harsh. It was calm, commanding, and filled with curiosity. Among her kind, to wear a helmet or mask before a ruler was a sign of disrespect. To remove it meant to show truth, to open oneself fully. Yet she did not ask this for tradition alone. She wanted to see what kind of being stood before her. The hall grew quieter, as if even the crystals were listening. The guard stiffened, waiting to see if the human would obey. Elias stood still for a long moment. His gloved hands lifted slowly, reaching toward the sides of his helmet. His movement was not rushed, not fearful. It was steady, deliberate. He pressed the locks on each side, and with a soft hiss of air, the helmet released its seal. The moment he lifted it off, the queen felt her breath catch. The human's face was revealed, not twisted in rage, not broken by fear, but calm. His eyes were clear, and within them burned something she did not understand. There was sorrow there, deep and heavy, yet it was not weakness. Alongside it lived determination, quiet but unyielding, like a fire that refused to die even in the darkest night. The queen had seen countless warriors in her life. She had seen bravery in battle and terror in defeat, but she had never seen eyes like these. She stepped closer, her long steps echoing on the crystal floor. Her voice softened, though she did not intend it. "You are not afraid?" Elias did not answer immediately. He glanced around the hall at the lines of alien soldiers, at the vast emptiness above him, and finally back at the queen. His voice when he spoke was low but steady. "I am not afraid of you." The words spread through the hall like ripples in still water. The guards shifted uncomfortably. Some muttered in disbelief, their claws tightening around their weapons. No one spoke to the queen in such a way, but Elias did not stop there. His tone remained calm, respectful, but firm. "I have known fear many times. I have faced battles where death was certain. Fear does not leave us, but we learn to carry it. We do not let it rule us." The queen tilted her head, her golden eyes narrowing. "You are my prisoner. Your army is gone, your world defeated. What gives you such strength to stand unshaken?" Elias paused. For a moment his gaze drifted downward as though he saw something far away. His voice grew quieter, yet stronger in meaning. "My people give me strength. Even if I stand alone, I carry them with me. I stand for those who cannot stand here. That is why I do not bow and why I do not fear." The queen felt something stir within her chest, something she had not felt in many years. Confusion. In her empire, strength was measured by conquest. Power was taken by force, respect demanded through fear. To see a prisoner speak with such conviction, not from arrogance but from loyalty, was something new. She studied his face again. The human's eyes did not shine with anger, yet they did not dim with despair either. They carried a weight of loss, but also a flame that refused to fade. The queen took another step closer. The guards tensed, but she lifted her hand and they froze in place. Her gaze locked with Elias's. "You are different from others I have seen," she admitted. "Tell me, human, what do you fight for when all is lost?" Elias drew a slow breath, his shoulders steady. "I fight for the chance that someone somewhere will live because I did. I fight so that even if I fall, another can rise. My life is not only mine, it belongs to those I protect." The hall was silent again. No one moved. Even the crystals above seemed frozen in their soft glow. The queen had expected resistance, perhaps anger. She had expected him to curse her, to spit words of hatred. But instead he spoke of others. He spoke not of himself but of people unseen. It unsettled her. For her kind, the self was everything. The Empire demanded loyalty to the throne, but only as a path to power. Compassion was weakness. Mercy was foolishness. And yet here stood a human, stripped of weapons, surrounded by enemies, speaking of protecting others as if it were the greatest power in existence. She turned slightly, her scales glimmering in the light, hiding the conflict on her face. Then she looked back at him. "You stand before your enemy, yet you speak of protection, not revenge. You reveal your face without shame. You surprise me, Captain Elias." The human met her gaze without hesitation. His voice carried no pride, only simple truth. "Perhaps that is what makes us human. We endure not for conquest, but for each other." For the first time in her reign, the alien queen felt unsure of herself. She had wanted to see his weakness. Instead, she had seen something she could not name, something that unsettled her more than any weapon. She turned back toward her throne, but the image of the human's eyes stayed in her mind. Sorrow and strength woven together, a contradiction that should not exist yet did. As Elias stood in the center of the hall, helmet in hand, the queen wondered quietly to herself, what kind of species produces warriors like this? The grand hall of the alien mothership remained quiet after the human had spoken. The floating crystals still glowed faintly, casting rippling light across the polished floor. The guards kept their weapons ready, yet none dared to move. Something had shifted in the air, something subtle but powerful. The queen stood at the edge of her throne platform, her tall frame glowing faintly in the crystal light. Her golden eyes were fixed on the human who had revealed his face. His words from before echoed in her mind. "I fight for those I protect. My life is not only mine." This was not the language of conquest. It was not the language of her empire. And yet the way he spoke carried weight, as though truth itself stood behind his voice. She descended one step from the platform, her claws clicking softly against the crystal floor. "You speak boldly, human," she said, her tone calm but curious. "But words can be shaped like weapons. Many prisoners have claimed strength to impress me. Tell me, Elias of Earth, why do you carry such sorrow in your eyes if you are as unbroken as you say?" Elias lifted his chin slightly. His helmet hung at his side, his other hand resting loosely against the scarred armor at his chest. His voice was steady, carrying no anger. "Because sorrow reminds me of what I must protect. It reminds me of what I have lost and what I cannot lose again." The queen tilted her head. To her kind, sorrow was a weakness that dulled the warrior's blade. But the human spoke of it as though it gave him strength. "Explain," she ordered. Elias drew in a slow breath. His eyes were calm, but their depths carried the weight of memory. "My people fight not because we are the strongest, but because we must. We know loss. We know pain. But it is in remembering that pain that we find reason to endure. I carry sorrow not to be crushed by it, but so I will never forget who I fight for." The queen paused. His words were strange to her ears. In her empire, warriors cast aside sorrow, crushing it before it could slow them. But this human embraced it as fuel. She found herself studying him more closely, as if trying to see the secret in his expression. "You stand before me. A prisoner," she said, circling him slowly, her long tail brushing the crystal floor behind her. "Your world burns. Your people fall. And still you claim strength. Why? What hope remains when all is taken?" Elias turned his head slightly, following her movement but not shrinking back. His voice was quiet, yet the hall carried every word. "Hope is not something that can be taken by force. You may destroy our cities, you may silence our armies, but hope lives in every survivor. It is the will to rise again, even when the world has fallen. That is what I carry with me, even here." The queen's steps slowed. She stopped directly before him, close enough that her golden eyes met his without barrier. "You claim to carry hope," she said softly. "But you are alone. Where is this strength you speak of?" when you have no one at your side. For the first time, Elias allowed a faint smile to touch his lips. It was not a smile of mockery, but of quiet certainty. Strength is not always shown by numbers. Sometimes it is shown by standing when all others have fallen. I may be alone in this hall, but I am not truly alone. My people live in me, as memory, as duty, as love. That is enough to keep me standing. The word love caught the Queen's attention. Among her kind, love was not a word used in battle. Affection was private, rarely spoken of, and never mixed with war. To hear a soldier speak of it openly unsettled her. You speak of love as though it is a shield, she said. How can such a thing protect you from death? Elias's gaze did not waver. His voice softened but grew even more certain. Love is stronger than death. Death ends a life, but love gives it meaning. Even if I fall, what I stood for will remain. My people will carry it forward. The Queen fell silent. She had expected defiance, pride, or perhaps despair. She had not expected this human to speak of love and hope in the face of her power. It was not weakness, yet it was not the strength she understood. Around them, the guards shifted uneasily, glancing at one another. They too sensed the strangeness of the moment. The Queen's voice finally broke the silence. You fear no death? Elias shook his head slowly. I fear only losing the chance to protect those I love. Death is not the enemy I fight. It is forgetting. It is giving up. It is letting fear turn us into something less than human. That is what I fear. The Queen's crest lifted slightly, a subtle sign of surprise. His words touched something deep within her, something she had buried long ago when she first took the throne. She remembered her training, her battles, the countless times she had been told that compassion and love had no place in the Empire. Yet here stood a creature from another world, teaching her that these very things were the roots of strength. For a long moment, she simply stared at him. Then she turned, her cloak of scales catching the light as she walked back toward her throne. But her steps were slower than before, her mind weighed down by thoughts she could not cast aside. Elias remained standing in the center of the hall, silent, helmet in hand. He did not press his words further. He had said what needed to be said, and he allowed the Queen to consider it. When she reached the base of her throne, she turned back to him once more. Her voice was quieter now, almost thoughtful. You are unlike any I have met. Most creatures stand before me in fear or in rage. You stand in sorrow and hope. Tell me, human, do all your kind speak so? Elias gave a small shake of his head. No, not all. But many carry the same heart. And those who don't, they learn from those who do. That is how we endure. And that is why we rise again after every fall. The Queen studied him carefully. She felt as though she were staring not at a prisoner, but at a teacher, one who carried lessons she had never been taught. His words stirred questions in her that she had never allowed herself to ask. At last she lifted her hand and motioned for the guards. They moved forward but did not seize Elias. Instead, they stood at attention, waiting. The Queen's eyes lingered on him a moment longer before she spoke. You will not be executed today, human. I would hear more of this strength you claim. You will remain here under my guard. Tomorrow we will speak again. Her voice carried authority, but beneath it was something else. Curiosity. Elias bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect, though not submission. Then tomorrow I will answer. The Queen returned to her throne, though her heart was restless. His words echoed in her mind. Hope lives in survivors. Love gives life meaning. Fear is not to be obeyed. For the first time in many years, the Queen did not feel certain in her own empire's teachings. And for the first time, she looked forward to tomorrow, not for conquest, but for answers. And in the silence of the vast hall, Captain Elias stood alone, but unbroken. The following day came with a quiet tension. The mothership floated in the endless black of space, surrounded by stars that glittered like distant fires. Within its glowing corridors, Captain Elias remained under guard. The alien soldiers had given him no chains, but their watchful eyes were enough to remind him that freedom was far away. He had been given a chamber to rest in, strange walls of crystal that shifted color with his breathing. The space was silent, too silent, and he had found little sleep. Instead, he sat awake, thinking of his people and what words might matter when he faced the Queen again. When the time arrived, the guards entered without a word. They gestured for him to rise and led him through winding passages, deeper into the heart of the vessel. Each hallway seemed alive, pulsing with energy that hummed beneath his boots. He walked calmly, helmet still in his hand, and did not speak. At last they reached the grand hall once more. The floating crystals glowed brighter today, filling the chamber with shifting light. The queen was already waiting, seated on her throne of woven light and crystal. Her golden eyes followed Elias as he entered, and she raised her hand. The guard stepped back, leaving him in the center once again. "Captain Elias," she said, her voice echoing through the vast room. "Yesterday you spoke of hope, of love, of strength beyond numbers. Your words were bold. Today I will see if they are true." Elias met her gaze steadily. "Then test me," he said simply. The queen's crest lifted slightly at his calmness. She turned her hand, and a series of symbols lit up in the air. The crystals above shifted, humming with energy. A beam of light spread across the center of the hall, and suddenly, a great image appeared. It was his world. The holographic vision shimmered with terrible detail. The skies of his colony burned with fire. Buildings lay shattered, smoke curling from broken towers. Ships lay broken in the dust, silent husks of once living machines. The cries of people could be faintly heard, echoing in the hall as if carried across the stars. Elias froze where he stood. His chest tightened as he looked at the ruins of home. His hands curled into fists, and his breath grew heavy. The vision was not just light. It carried sound, smell, and memory. He could almost feel the heat of flames, almost hear the voices of those who had called his name. The queen's voice cut through the vision. "Look well, human. This is your world, burned, fallen, gone. What hope remains now? What meaning do your words carry when your home lies in ashes?" The hall fell silent except for the crackle of fire from the hologram. The guards watched closely, expecting anger or collapse. Many captives had broken under less, but Elias did not fall. Slowly he lifted his head, his eyes wet with unshed tears, but his gaze steady. "My home may fall," he said quietly, "but my people are not stone or steel. We are more than the walls we build, more than the ground we walk. You can destroy our cities, but you cannot destroy the will of those who live. We will rise again because we remember. That memory cannot be burned." The queen narrowed her eyes. She had expected grief to crush him, to bend his will. Instead, it seemed to sharpen him. "You see only ruins," she said. "Yet you speak of rising again. How can you believe such a thing when nothing remains?" Elias looked at the burning image again. His chest ached with loss, but his voice carried the strength of conviction. "I believe because I have seen it before. Humans have fallen many times in history. Wars, disasters, tragedies that should have ended us. But each time we stood again. Each time we rebuilt stronger. We are not measured by what we lose, but by how we endure. This is only another trial." His words echoed in the chamber, and even the guard shifted uneasily. The queen studied him, unsettled. She commanded the crystals again, and the vision shifted. Now the image showed not just ruins, but faces. Men, women, children, all frightened, running, some falling into silence. Their voices echoed in pain. The queen's voice hardened. "And what of them, human? What of those who are lost? Can your hope bring them back? Can your love shield them from the fire?" Elias's breath caught. The sight of familiar faces twisted his heart. For a long moment he was silent. Then he bowed his head, tears slipping down his cheeks. "No," he admitted, his voice rough with pain. "I cannot bring them back. I cannot shield them from what has already passed. But I can honor them. I can carry their memory so they are not forgotten. And I can fight to make sure others do not fall the same way. Their lives are not erased if I remember them, if I protect what remains." The queen stared at him. Tears were weakness in her empire. They showed a spirit broken. Yet here was a man who let them fall without shame, and somehow it did not make him weaker. It made him stronger. "You weep," she said softly, almost to herself, "and yet you do not bow." Elias raised his head. His voice steadied again. "Tears are not surrender. They are proof that we feel, that we care. Without them, we would be empty. I carry sorrow, but I carry it with strength." The queen's eyes lingered on his face. For the first time in many cycles, she felt something she could not name. His sorrow was not weakness. His hope was not foolishness. It was a kind of strength she had never seen. She dismissed the vision with a wave of her hand. The flames and voices faded, leaving only the quiet glow of crystals above. For a long time she said nothing, staring down at the human who still stood tall despite the pain she had shown him. At last she spoke. You are unlike any who have stood in this hall. Others break or curse or beg. You shed tears yet remain unbroken. You carry loss yet you call it strength. You confuse me, Captain Elias. Elias gave a faint, weary smile. Perhaps that is because we humans are built from contradictions. We grieve yet we endure. We are fragile yet we rise. That is what makes us human. The Queen sat back slowly on her throne, her golden eyes never leaving him. She could not deny what she had seen. His strength was real, though it was not the kind her empire taught. It was something deeper, something that unsettled her more than any weapon could. Finally, she lifted her hand, signaling for the guards to stand down. Her voice was calm but thoughtful. Your test is passed, human. Tomorrow we will speak again. But know this, I do not yet understand you. And what I do not understand, I cannot ignore. The guard stepped forward but did not touch Elias. They only motioned for him to leave. As he turned to follow them, the Queen's gaze lingered on his back, her mind heavy with questions. For the first time in her rule, the Queen of an empire felt that perhaps her people had overlooked a kind of strength greater than conquest, and it came from a single human who refused to bow. The Grand Hall had emptied after the test. The alien Queen had dismissed her guards, sending them back to their posts at the edges of the mothership. Only the faint glow of the hovering crystals remained, filling the vast space with soft shifting light. Elias stood in the center once more, helmet still in his hand. He waited quietly, his eyes steady, his shoulders straight. Though his body was weary from long captivity, there was no sign of surrender in his stance. The Queen descended slowly from her throne, her long steps echoing on the crystal floor. Without her guards, the chamber felt strangely smaller, quieter. She came closer, her golden eyes fixed on Elias, not with hostility but with something different. Curiosity, perhaps even doubt. She stopped a short distance from him. Her voice was softer now, stripped of the commanding tone she had carried before. Human, I do not understand you. Elias tilted his head slightly, meeting her gaze. What do you wish to understand? The Queen's crest shifted slightly, a subtle sign of unease. You saw your world destroyed. You saw your people fall, yet you did not curse me. You did not beg for mercy. You did not even hate. Why? Do you not know that I lead this war against your kind? Elias was silent for a moment. His fingers tightened on his helmet, his expression thoughtful. Then he spoke, calm and steady as always. I know who you are. I know what you command. But I do not hate you. The Queen's eyes widened slightly. She had expected denial or defiance or rage, but not this. Her voice sharpened, though beneath it was confusion. You should hate me. I am the one who brings war to your people. I am the reason your home burns.
How can you not?
Elias's gaze did not waver. His voice grew softer, yet his words carried more weight. Because hate consumes the future. If I allow myself to hate you, then I become no different than the war I fight against. Hate builds nothing. It only destroys. I would rather give my strength to hope, even if it is fragile, than waste it on hate. The Queen stared at him. His words pierced her in ways she had not expected. For as long as she could remember, she had been taught that hate was fuel, that conquest required anger, that an empire thrived on the destruction of its enemies. Yet here was a prisoner, standing unarmed before her, telling her that hate destroyed the future. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You would forgive me then? After all I have done? Elias shook his head slowly. No, forgiveness is not mine to give. The lives lost cannot be returned by words, but I choose not to hate. That is different. Hate is a chain. If I wear it, then I am no longer free. Forgiveness may never come, but choosing another path is still possible. The Queen's golden eyes softened, her chest tightening with an emotion she had not felt in years. She stepped closer, lowering her tall form until she was only a few steps away. For the first time in her rule, she did not look like a conqueror. She looked like a soul searching for something she had lost. You speak as though you believe even I could choose another path, she said slowly. Elias gave a faint smile. I believe anyone can choose no matter how far they have walked in one direction. The past cannot be undone, but the future is always open. The Queen fell silent. His words echoed in her mind. For centuries, her people had lived only for conquest. Victory was their law and mercy was weakness. She herself had carried that belief without question. Yet here was a being who had lost everything, And instead of surrendering to hatred, he spoke of choice, of hope, of a future beyond war. It unsettled her. It frightened her. But it also stirred something she had long forgotten. She turned slightly, looking away, her scales glimmering faintly in the light. Her voice, when it came again, was almost uncertain. "Why do you speak to me this way? Why do you not curse me as others have?" Elias's answer came without hesitation. "Because I do not see only an enemy. I see someone who can still choose. And if I can show even one soul that there is another path, then my fight has meaning even here." The Queen's breath caught. His words were simple, yet they shook the very foundation of her belief. She had always seen enemies as obstacles, as beings to crush or erase. But this human looked at her, the leader of an empire, and saw someone who could still change. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with questions neither had asked before. Finally, the Queen straightened, her crest lifting again, though her expression was no longer the same. Her golden eyes still held strength, but beneath it was doubt. And beneath that doubt was something even more dangerous. Wonder. "You are strange, human," she said quietly. "Strange and dangerous, not because of your weapons or your armies, but because of your heart. It unsettles me." Elias bowed his head slightly. "Perhaps that is what makes us human. We unsettle those who believe the world can never change." The Queen turned, walking back slowly toward her throne. Her steps were heavy, though her form remained tall and regal. She sat once more upon the woven seat of crystal and light, but her mind was restless. She looked down at Elias, and for the first time, she did not see a prisoner. She saw a mirror, one that reflected the parts of herself she had buried long ago. Her voice came softly, almost like a secret meant only for the two of them. "You have given me something I did not ask for, human. Doubt, and perhaps hope." Elias raised his eyes to her, his expression calm. "Then perhaps my words have done their work." The Queen leaned back in her throne, her eyes never leaving him. She did not dismiss him immediately as she had before. Instead, she studied him quietly, her thoughts tangled, her heart heavy with questions she had no answer for. Outside the mothership, the stars burned silently, indifferent to the struggles of empires. But inside the hall, something had begun to shift. Not with weapons or conquest, but with words, with tears, with truths carried by a single human standing unbroken. And in that moment, though no battle was fought, a victory had been won, the kind that no empire could measure. The grand hall was quiet when Elias was brought before the Queen once again. Her guards stood at attention, but they did not speak. The air was heavy, as though it carried the weight of the past days. Above them, the glowing crystals pulsed softly, their light bathing the chamber in a serene glow. Elias walked slowly, his boots making soft sound against the crystal floor. His armor was worn, his shoulders heavy, yet his step was steady. He had faced a test, spoken truth to power, and now he stood again before the alien Queen. This time not as a prisoner, but as something else. Something she did not yet understand. The Queen sat on her throne, her golden eyes fixed on him. There was no anger in her gaze now, nor cruelty. Instead, there was a kind of quiet war within her, a battle she had not expected. For days, Elias's words had echoed in her mind. Doubt, hope, love, strength. These were not the words of conquest. They were the words of a world she had never known. She gestured for him to step closer. He obeyed. As he came before her, she spoke, her voice quieter than before. "You stand before me without chains, without fear? You have spoken of hope, of love, of endurance. You have told me that even I can choose another path. Why do you risk so much for words?" Elias looked at her without hesitation. His voice was calm. "Because words are the seed of change. A sword can destroy a city, but it cannot build a future. Only understanding, only truth can do that. I risk everything because if I do not, the cycle of destruction will never end." The Queen leaned forward slightly, her long fingers resting on the arms of her throne. "You have given me doubt. That is dangerous for one like me. I am the ruler of an empire built on certainty. What you speak of challenges all I have known. Tell me, human, if you truly believe your way is stronger, why do you not fight for it in words alone? Why stand here in chains?" Elias's shoulders shifted slightly, but he did not look away. "Because truth is not only spoken, it is shown. I stand here so that you may see it, so that you may understand that strength is not in conquest, but in compassion, that the heart is more powerful than any weapon, The queen's breath was quiet in the still hall. For centuries she had measured strength by victory in battle, by the fall of enemies. Yet here stood a human who measured strength in the courage to care. "You speak of compassion," she said slowly, "and yet you speak to the queen of an empire you have no claim to command. Compassion is dangerous, it is weakness. Why should I listen to you?" Elias's gaze was steady. "Because compassion is not weakness. It is the hardest choice a leader can make. To show mercy when you have the power to destroy, that is strength. That is why humanity endures. We have been broken countless times, but we rise again because we remember who we fight for." The queen looked away, her eyes following the glow of the crystals above. For a long moment silence passed between them. Then she spoke again, softer this time. "And if I choose differently? If I choose to continue the path of war?" Elias stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. "Then you will have chosen conquest over peace. But the choice is yours. All I offer is the truth of what I know. That hope endures when we choose to protect, not destroy." The queen's shoulders shifted as if carrying a weight she could not bear alone. Her golden eyes softened. "You stun me, Elias. My empire teaches that compassion is weakness, yet I feel something stronger in your words than in all our armies." Elias bowed his head slightly, his voice quiet. "Compassion is the hardest strength to bear. That is why it lasts. That is why it changes worlds." The queen studied him long, her voice breaking her silence. "You have spoken of love, of hope, of endurance. You have shown me sorrow without surrender, tears without weakness. I do not know if I can change the way of my empire, but I know this, I cannot forget what you have said." There was a long pause. The hall felt alive with possibility. Outside the mothership, the stars shimmered, indifferent yet beautiful. Inside, an empire's queen was listening to a human speak of the kind of strength she had never known. Finally, she rose from her throne. The guards tensed, unsure of her intent. But her voice was calm. "Elias, your words have shaken me. My heart tells me that you speak truth. My mind resists it. But the choice is mine to make." She stepped closer to him, her scales shimmering in the light. She raised her hand, palm open. "You will leave this place. Not as a prisoner, but as one who carries his truth freely. Go back to your people. Teach them as you have taught me." Elias's breath caught. He lowered his head in respect. "Thank you." The queen's golden eyes held his for a long moment. Then she whispered almost to herself, "Perhaps humans are not conquerors of worlds, but of souls." She turned, signaling her guards. They stepped forward but did not speak. The sound of boots echoed softly through the hall as Elias walked toward the exit. Before he left, he turned his head. His voice was low but steady. "Do not forget the choice you have, my queen. Even empires can change." The queen did not answer. She watched him leave, the helmet in his hand catching the crystal light. He disappeared down the corridor and the door sealed behind him. The hall was quiet once more, but the silence was different now. It was not filled with fear or victory. It was filled with questions, with something new. Hope. For the first time in her reign, the queen of a great empire did not feel certain of her path. She sat alone upon her throne, her thoughts restless, her heart heavy with doubt. Outside the mothership, the galaxy moved in silence. Stars continued to burn, worlds continued to turn, and somewhere in that vastness, a human walked free, not through force, not through conquest, but through the strength of his heart. And the queen knew, deep within her, that the choice she must make would not be for herself alone. For in that moment, the fate of her empire, and perhaps the fate of many worlds, rested on one decision.